This is Fothentic History.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Brian Young.
And I'm Holly Fry.
So, welcome to part 2 of the Infinity War series that we did. And like we mentioned last show, this was part of our live Salt Lake Comic-Con show.
Yeah, which we had some technical issues with the recording.
But now you have a better recording.
Yeah. Brian, do you want to catch everybody up on what they missed in last time's history lesson?
Yeah, so last time we learned that Thanos, who's an immortal sort of being, demigod from the planet of Titan, fell in love with death. And he'd had some run-ins before with the Avengers and Adam Warlock, where they killed him, but death actually sort of saw him as a good instrument to balance life and death in the galaxy and brought him back to life and asked him to kill half the population of the Earth. Or not just the Earth, the galaxy. If it were just the Earth, that would be a lot easier to stomach, actually, surprisingly. And he didn't want to just do that. He wanted to play a slow game, knowing that if he just started killing half the population of every planet in the galaxy, that heroes would ally to destroy him sooner rather than later. So he decided to play a much longer game. And in order to do this, while he was gazing into the infinity pool, decided that he would collect all of the infinity stones in the galaxy, all 6 of them, and capture them or place them all into a gauntlet, and he would use that power to win Death's love. But as we ended last time, Death wasn't necessarily thrilled about this. She felt that he had elevated himself to a station above her, and that she was now his inferior, and that she did not love him at this point. And this sort of enraged him, and at that point, he committed to winning her love by any means necessary, and that's when the Infinity War began. Yeah. And that's where we're going to start.
Yeah, so before we start, I feel like this is one of those pieces of history that I'm really happy to talk about long after the fact, because it's terrifying. And the other thing is, and I mentioned it at the end of the last show, like, really all this trouble is caused by one person who cannot handle not having their affections returned. So, first, to start the Infinity War, Thanos winked into existence a monument to Death, hoping that this would win her love. And it was actually a throne that was created of white marble and the skulls of the dead, floating in the eternity of space. But she refused to stand with him. Mephisto, a hell lord often mistaken for the biblical Satan, that's one of those pieces of history that's gotten a little bit blurred as people have tried to make sense of things that are difficult to comprehend and also to retell things. It gets a little hazy. But Mephisto explained that Thanos had still not proven his depravity and earned her love, nor had he provided a token worthy of Lady Death.
Thanos took this challenge and produced his granddaughter Nebula. He shriveled her and offered her to death as a sculpture he called the Walking Death. Her limbs were twisted, her flesh charred and cracked. She existed in a limbo on the line between life and death, and lived in continuous horror and agony. Thanos called her his living tribute to the blasphemy of life and the glorious promise of death.
But even though Nebula suffered immensely, this didn't convince Death either. So Thanos knew what had to be done. And with a snap of his fingers, half of the population of the galaxy simply ceased to exist. Spider-Man was swinging through the city when Mary Jane Watson and half of New York disappeared from existence. Captain America watched Hawkeye vanish into death. Dr. Doom watched half of the population of Latveria vanish. The entirety of the Japanese islands were destroyed.
Beast died this way, as did Daredevil, the entire Fantastic Four, Luke Cage, Puck, Iceman, even the god Hercules fell in this manner.
And this sudden loss of population was not just centered on Earth. It was on a galactic scale. Epoch, the omniscient keeper of cosmic awareness, noted this across the galaxy and roused the cosmic guardian Quasar into action. Captain DC of the Kree Empire filed a captain's log about half of the Kree population simply disappearing.
That actually launched the Kree for a time, decided that the Skrulls were responsible, or must have been responsible, and actually ended with them trying to launch a war against the Skrulls. I mean, everywhere people were looking for answers. Another one looking for answers was Odin. Odin watched half of the Asgardians in his realm die and assembled the gods, calling this catastrophe a universal plague. Zeus of Olympus, Manitou, the spirit of Native Americans, the Aztec god, the Russian Savrog, and many others all saw the same thing, and they vowed to fight.
Silver Surfer went to the Sanctum Sanctorum to warn Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme, of the threat that Thanos posed. But before they could discuss anything, Dr. Doom arrived, demanding answers. Doom and Silver Surfer actually fought briefly because the Surfer did not trust Doom, but that fight was broken up pretty quickly by the arrival of Adam Warlock, who we referenced in part 1 of this episode.
So Adam Warlock had lived many lives. He was created by the Beehive to be the perfect being. He ended up beaten to death by Thor when he kidnapped Lady Sif to marry her. He was then resurrected by the High Evolutionary and given the name Warlock and imbued with the power of the Soul Gem. He died again fighting Thanos and lost the Soul Gem because in order to defeat Thanos, he had to commit his own soul to the gem itself.
Warlock was there with a plan to defeat Thanos, but he was going to need to be the ultimate leader of the mortal realm. Doctor Strange and Doom were hesitant about this plan, but Warlock bonded souls with Strange, who then trusted his moves completely after being able to see into his soul. And Doom took Strange's word and joined with them, and wagering that a being with the power to snap his fingers and wink anyone from existence was enough of a threat that maybe they should all be convinced to fight alongside each other. So Doom was brought in this way.
That Dr. Doom was like, okay, I'll sign up with the Avengers, essentially, is a pretty big deal and should give you a barometer on how threatening this was to the very fabric of reality. So Warlock counseled a patient approach to deal with Thanos, and he and his allies went to Avengers headquarters to begin to raise their army. Doctor Strange gathered many of Earth's remaining heroes, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Wolverine, Drax the Destroyer, Firelord, Nova, Submariner, Cloak, who'd actually lost Dagger in Thanos' attack, Cyclops, Scarlet Witch, and the Hulk, and many, many others.
Meanwhile, Thanos had gone mad with power, truly earning his nickname, the Mad Titan. He brought his brother Eros to the space platform throne and then tortured him by bending reality around him in the hopes of amusing death. And it's fortunate for Warlock that Thanos' attention was turned to torturing his familial ties in the hopes of amusing death, because that gave them time to rally their forces to stand against the limitless power that Thanos had amassed.
Once Adam Warlock gathered the remaining heroes of Earth, he left Captain America in command of this newly assembled force. Warlock knew they needed much bigger allies in the fight against Thanos, cosmic allies. So he, Doctor Strange, and Silver Surfer took to the cosmos to speak to perhaps the most powerful assembly of cosmic beings ever collected.
Warlock gathered the astral deities of the universe to fight, and this included Eternity, the actual embodiment of all there is, Uatu the Watcher, Kronos, the Titan god of time, Lord Chaos and Master Order, the living tribunal who was the cosmic judge of all realities, the enigmatic stranger, the embodiment of love and hate, the two remaining celestials, and the destroyer of worlds, Galactus himself.
Where the mortals of the world understood the existential threat, the cosmic deities of the galaxies weren't all so easily convinced.
The proceedings of this cosmic meeting began with Eternity pleading his case to the Living Tribunal. And the Living Tribunal was powerful enough to actually end Thanos immediately, were he to so judge him. Eternity claimed that the Mad Titan would unbalance all that is and throw the nature of the universe into a maniacal entropy.
The Living Tribunal had higher laws to regard, though, and based on the evidence declared that natural selection was one of the universe's oldest canons. If Thanos was strong enough to replace eternity, then eternity was not strong enough to survive. Determining that no cosmic laws were being broken, the Living Tribunal left the summit, vowing not to get involved in the matter further. Spurned, eternity left as well.
The Watcher also vowed to not get involved, opting to remain just a Watcher and record and observe the situation. Galactus agreed to fight Thanos, but, like Dr. Doom, viewed himself as the natural leader. And to this end, he blasted Adam Warlock into oblivion and tried to take control of the Cosmic Alliance. But Warlock was not so easily killed, and claimed that Galactus had let his anger cloud his judgment and was clearly not capable of making the difficult and calculated decisions that were going to be necessary to defeat Thanos.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good call on
I
Warlock's
concur.
part. So Master Order and Chaos agreed, and they pledged themselves to Adam Warlock and his plan. Epic and Quasar vowed to ally with Warlock next. Then the Stranger, Love and Hate, the Celestials, and Kronos. Eventually, even Galactus reluctantly agreed.
While Strange and his new allies left for Earth, the Watcher went to Thanos. He didn't say anything to Thanos, and he didn't warn him of what was to come, but Thanos was no fool. He knew that the Watcher's arrival heralded the beginning of hostilities, and that the fight would soon come to him. You kind of get a clue when a being of this scale just shows up and is like, hello.
I'm gonna hear.
Just hanging out. Hi, what's up? Thanos took this challenge really gratefully, vowing that the heavens were going to run red with blood.
Thanos asked Death if she would stand by his side in the coming conflict, but without a word, she turned her back on him. Infuriated, Thanos vowed to not rule alone in the cosmos, and with the power of the Infinity Gauntlet, he would craft his own mate. And his will created Taraxia the Terrible, a physical embodiment of everything his soul longed for. With Taraxia submissively at his side, Thanos sent Death away in his preparation for the final battle.
And back on Earth, Doctor Strange went about casting spells that would allow all of the mortals that were going to be in this battle to breathe in space for 60 full minutes. And then he created portals to deliver each of them to their places for Warlock's master plan. Doctor Strange then remained in the Avengers' headquarters to monitor the situation telepathically, taking in a view of the entire conflict and reporting back throughout to Adam Warlock.
Once the mortal heroes were in place, Warlock and Silver Surfer held themselves in reserve to swoop in after the initial assault. Surfer was confused about why they were holding back, but Warlock explained the truth. The heroes of Earth who participated in this first assault were sacrificial lambs in a diversion. Thanos was omnipotent and controlled all aspects of time, reality, space, power, soul, and mind. There was no way to beat him physically, so Warlock was forced to play a long game at the expense of all of these lives.
And though the heroes marched to their slaughter, it was Mephisto who convinced Thanos to not wipe them out entirely. Quote, "You have power without limit," he whispered into the ear of Thanos. "Yet you still fail to win Mistress Death's heart. These buffoons," he said, referring to every living hero in the galaxy, "may prove useful in changing the situation."
Mephisto convinced Thanos to balance the scales to prove his courage to Death. Thanos figured the only way to prove his worth was to make the possibility of his defeat a reality. So Thanos cut himself off from the sensory input of the gems, allowing him to retain all of the cosmic power, but rendered him unable to predict the moves of his enemies. Mephisto agreed that this gesture just might be enough to win Mistress Death, and Thanos didn't realize that the devil himself had given the beings of the galaxy a chance to survive.
When Thanos explained his plan to Death, Mephisto insisted that he saw a twinkle in her eye. Thanos restarted time with his limited abilities, and he found himself instantly pounded by the fists of Hulk and Drax. But Thanos grew 10 times his size to deal with that threat, swatting the pair away like flies. And while Thanos was impressed by Captain America's battle plans when he came at him, they really did nothing to stop Thanos.
One by one, Thanos destroyed or incapacitated all who opposed him. He buried She-Hulk and Namor in a suffocating mold. He banished Thor's hammer Mjolnir to another realm and tossed Thor himself into the cosmos. Doctor Doom tried stealing the Infinity Gauntlet and was blasted with so much energy that only the defensive measures of his armor saved him from certain death. The Wolverine struck what would have been a killing blow, but Thanos merely laughed them off and transformed Wolverine's adamantium bones into spongy rubber, leaving him flopping on the ground like
Iron Man tried attacking Thanos, but was decapitated by Taraxia. Thanos encased Cyclops' head in a clear block, cutting off the force of his beams and oxygen to his brain until he suffocated. Thanos reached into Vision's heart and pulled the inner workings of his chest out. Captain America distracted Thanos long enough for Cloak to entangle the Mad Titan into the dark dimension inside his cloak, but Thanos was too powerful and Cloak was annihilated.
Thanos then opened a time portal and deposited Drax and Firelord into it. After that, he killed Spider-Man, Quasar, Nova, and the rest, until only Captain America stood before him saying, quote, "As long as one man stands against you, Thanos, you'll never be able to claim
Victory.
Thanos shattered Cap's shield and was about to kill him when Warlock gave his command, which sent the Silver Surfer into battle.
Thanos raised his gauntlet-clad fist into the air, and the Surfer raced for it, trying to remove it from Thanos' hand while he was distracted with the business of
Killing Captain America. But the Surfer missed.
Captain America landed one more punch before Thanos snapped his neck and realized his mistake. The Mad Titan willed himself back to full power, knowing that the real conflict
So at
loomed.
this point, Warlock unleashed his cosmic army. Order and Chaos gave Thanos an ultimatum. Give up the Infinity Stones or face a power beyond your reckoning. But with actual omnipotence, Thanos was completely defiant.
The Watcher described watching the conflict thusly, quote, "The powers unleashed in the initial clash are beyond the power of words to describe. Many of the edicts of nature fall victim to the assault. I sense near collapse along the entire spectrum of reality. Fear grows within my heart, the fear that I am witnessing the end of the universe."
In the power of the fight between Warlock's cosmic army and Thanos, billions died as surrounding solar systems exploded. The Celestials dragged helpless planets into the fray, hurling them at Thanos, but that was merely a diversion. Kronos worked to bury Thanos in times forgotten, but that was futile as trying to drown an ocean. Master and Chaos worked to dichotomize the Titan, dividing him against himself, but Thanos retained his individuality.
Thanos stopped for a moment to consider the fate of the galaxy, wondering if he should kill his heavenly brothers or honor and cherish them. But his true realization was that the battle itself was madness. Only for a moment, though, because he also realized that this realization was the attack of love and hate. And it had worked momentarily. Just as he was about to dispatch them, Mephisto made his own move to steal the gauntlet. But before Thanos could destroy him, Death herself interceded, picking her side.
In heartbreak, Thanos paused the battle and put his cosmic enemies in a stasis. With all of his foes gone, and sadness consuming his heart, Thanos let his guard down. And the shell of a being that was the zombie-like Nebula stirred, her consciousness took over, and she was able to snatch the gauntlet from Thanos' hand.
With her new power, Nebula cast Thanos and Taraxia into space, instantly killing Taraxia. Nebula then set the world back to the way it was, resurrecting those who'd died in Thanos' initial assault, and those who'd fallen in opposing him.
But she still wanted the power for herself.
Because Nebula was so new to this power of omnipotence, the cosmic forces that had teamed up against Thanos were able to distract her long enough for the final part of Adam Warlock's plan to work.
Warlock was able to drag the soul of himself and Silver Surfer into the Soul Gem because that's where his power was greatest. Using Silver Surfer's soul as an anchor, he was able to disrupt Nebula and take the glove from her hand, taking the power for himself. But Warlock was benevolent and refused to play the game Thanos had, instead being a powerful
Force for good.
Thanos, of course, tried to take the gauntlet for himself again, but when that did not work, he vowed to kill himself rather than be imprisoned. He had a nuclear device tied to his belt, and he would kill all the remaining heroes along with himself. Thor blasted him out into space, where he exploded, all alone.
Afterwards, Warlock went to work setting things right. He put the worlds back together and transported all of his erstwhile allies home. But before he set out on his ultimate journey to be a benevolent but non-interfering god,
He had one last stop to make.
On a small planet, unnamed in the star charts, he visited a small farm, hoping to ask the sole occupant of that planet for some advice. And that peaceful farmer was actually Thanos. He had faked his own death, but the only advice that Thanos could offer Warlock, having withstood the power, was that Warlock had to endure or surrender the power that he now held. So Warlock left him there to live out his days farming in peace, ending his attempts to conquer the cosmos or win the heart of Mistress Death. At least, for then.
it makes me wonder how much of an impact the Gardener actually had on Thanos, and it's a really interesting choice that Thanos would sort of become the Gardener.
It is, and it's sort of like the perfect cherry on top of a very heady series of events that it ends in a small place with peace.
Yeah, very much so. So that's the Infinity Gauntlet. That's the tale of the first War of Infinity and how it ended.
But there's always more, and one day perhaps we will discuss those parts of history as well.
Yeah. So with that finished, again, we don't have any mail at this point. We just have some show recommendations we've received, and we loved receiving those. If you'd like to send us any new mail, you can go to fauthentichistory.com, and that's where you can fill out the contact form and send us ideas for shows or any additions to any of these stories or things we might have missed. We'd love to hear about that, and or any firsthand experiences you had in any of these events. So, fauthentichistory.com. And you can hit that contact form. Holly, where can people find you?
I'm easy to find. I'm on Twitter at SurliestGirl, and I'm on Instagram as SurlyGirly5. I am also part of the Stuff You Missed in History Class podcast, which can be found at missedinhistory.com, which then has connections to all of our social media, which is pretty much Missed in History across the board. And then on occasion, I get to talk with you and Mike Pilot about Star Wars on Full of Sith.
Yeah, so if you're interested in Star Wars, please come by Full of Sith and listen to the three of us chat. As for me, you can find me on social media kind of across the board at Swankmatron, whether that's Twitter, which is probably where I'm most active, or Patreon, or Instagram, or Facebook, or wherever. And that's where you can find me. You can find my writings elsewhere too, but they'll always end up sort of pushed through Twitter. That's about all there is. As far as Fauthentic History, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at, if you type in Fauthentic History in Facebook, you'll find us there. If you type in Fauthentics on Twitter, that's where you'll find us there. We'd love to hear any reviews you have of the show, where you'd want to drop those wherever you listen to it, whether that's iTunes or Stitcher or anywhere else. And I can't think of anything else, Holly. Is there...
I think you've been extremely thorough in covering all bases.
Okay, well then, until next time.
Thank you.